Okay, so today we're diving into MicrogreensLA.Live.
Okay.
And I have to admit, just looking over your notes on them, this idea of fresh, local microgreens, but like nationwide,
Yeah,
it's a bold claim to me.
it is ambitious for sure.
What's the first thing that jumps out at you when you look at this company?
Well, their marketing materials definitely caught my eye too. And I think what's so fascinating here is how they're tackling that local challenge,
Right.
but on a national scale.
Yeah.
So that 50-mile radius model for each farm, that's key.
Right, because it's not like you're shipping a head of lettuce, you know?
Exactly.
Freshness seems extra important with microgreens.
For sure. For sure. And there's the sustainability angle too, right?
Okay.
Like shorter distances, less carbon footprint for transportation. So they're appealing, I think, to the eco-conscious consumer.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
For sure. Okay, so we've got local, we've got fresh, but then there's this whole other element of growing hydroponically,
Yes.
which I have to admit I don't fully understand. It's not soil, right?
No, you get hydroponics basically means they're growing in water,
Okay.
but not just any water. It's enriched with all the nutrients the plants need. So it's sort of like
Oh,
a supercharged bath for your greens.
a supercharged bath. That's one way to put it.
Yeah,
And what about this liquid dirt I'm seeing everywhere?
I know, right?
It sounds a bit like something out of a sci-fi movie, not on my salad.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks to their organic approach, at least in principle.
Okay.
So liquid dirt seems to be their name for their special fertilizer.
Okay.
So probably some blend of natural ingredients to provide those essential nutrients.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got all this talk of sustainability,
Right.
these interesting growing methods,
Mm.
but will it even taste good?
That's a good question.
Their website lists all these varieties I've never even heard of, like
Oh.
Rambo radish,
Yeah.
wasabi mustard. Are we talking about gourmet microgreens here?
That's what I was thinking. They're listing some really unique options.
Yeah.
And that tells me that they're not just going for the health-conscious consumer.
Right.
They're trying to target the foodie in you, too.
So they're really trying to elevate microgreens beyond just like a simple garnish or afterthought.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And if they can make microgreens a staple ingredient,
Yeah.
not a luxury,
Right.
that dramatically increases their potential market. Think about it. Juices, smoothies, even full-on dishes.
Yeah.
You know.
And they even mention on their website using them in juices and smoothies, so it's not just about sprinkling these on your salad anymore.
It's about versatility.
Yeah.
They're positioning microgreens as a core ingredient,
Right.
adaptable to different dishes and lifestyles.
Right.
Again, which makes their potential market much larger than if they're just marketing to the niche health food crowd.
Okay. So we've got that, but they're also throwing around some big words here like revolutionizing how we eat.
Right.
That's a pretty bold statement to make. Can microgreens really live up to that kind of height?
Well, let's unpack that revolution idea a little bit.
Okay.
They're incredibly nutrient dense. We know that.
Yeah.
And they tick a lot of the boxes for today's consumer. Local, fresh, sustainably grown. But there's also this movement aspect that they're pushing.
Their marketing mentions this movement a lot. It's almost like they're selling a philosophy, not just a product.
Right.
What do you make of that?
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
I think they're tapping into this growing desire
Yeah.
for transparency and connection
Okay.
in our food system.
For sure.
You see it yourself. Consumers are savvier than ever.
Yeah.
They want to know where their food comes from, how it's grown, the impact on the environment.
And to that point, they really highlight their founder's story on their website. Like, started small, growing in their backyard in LA, and then expanded from there.
Yeah.
It's a very classic, like, follow your passion narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Authenticity is key, right?
Yeah.
Especially for a company that's trying to spark a movement. People connect with stories.
Right.
They connect with passion. So are they really building a movement that remains to be seen?
Right.
But they're smart to leverage those values
Yeah.
and that personal touch.
So we've got ambition. We've got sustainability. We've got a potential movement. But we also have to talk about the elephant in the room. Can they actually pull this off?
Right.
Can they scale a business model that's built on freshness and local sourcing
Right?
to a national level?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're clearly betting on hydroponics as the key to their scalability.
Well, we already talked about how important freshness is to their brand.
Right.
And I have to imagine that even with that 50-mile radius, getting these microgreens to consumers quickly, efficiently, all across the country, that's a logistical hurdle.
It is, and I think that's where we need to look beyond the marketing buzzwords.
Okay?
How does hydroponics really work at scale?
Yeah.
Can it deliver on both quality and quantity?
Right. And what about the energy consumption of these hydroponic farms?
For sure.
Because that will ultimately impact their sustainability claims.
Exactly. This is something you're clearly interested in. It's worth digging deeper into their practices.
Yeah.
Do they use renewable energy sources for their farms?
Right.
How do they minimize waste?
It's almost like they're not just selling microgreens.
Yeah.
No, they're selling this whole philosophy.
Precisely. And it's a philosophy that I think a lot of people are really interested in right now.
Right.
This idea of a more conscious way of eating.
Exactly.
And that's where their success will really hinge on bridging that gap between aspiration and reality.
Yeah.
Can they deliver both in terms of quality and ethics?
Because anyone can slap a sustainable label on something these days.
That's right. And it's up to the consumer to really do their homework.
Exactly. And that's why I think these deep dives are so valuable.
Absolutely.
You're taking the time to really unpack these claims.
Yeah.
Understand the nuances of a company's model.
Right.
And in this case, with Microgreens LA.Live, I think there's a lot to unpack.
There is a lot to unpack, for sure.
Okay, so for someone listening who's maybe intrigued by Microgreens LA, but maybe also a little skeptical, what's the key takeaway here?
I would say approach it with informed curiosity.
Okay.
Don't just take their marketing at face value.
Yeah.
Look for concrete evidence of their sustainability practices.
Okay.
Compare their prices and product offerings with other local options.
Right.
See if they're actually sparking that movement they're talking about.
Because maybe tiny greens can have a big impact.
Maybe they can.
But like any good recipe,
the
proof is in the tasting.
Well said.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think this deep dive gave us a lot to think about.
Definitely.
And, sometimes asking the right questions is just as important as having all the answers.
For sure. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.